Welcome to No Room for Phonies.
Hello.
It is almost the end of June.
And this is episode 67.
I think so. 67.
Yes.
And we were going to do one on biking this time, but we've recruited a couple of
Cyclists.
super bikers to do it with us. And so we're going to actually delay it to the end of July because we're going to tape it around like the 24th or something of July.
Sounds good.
If all goes well. And our
So the new topic. Go ahead.
Our son and his friend Nick are avid cyclists. So I wanted them to talk about their cycling life. And they've agreed. So anyway, we're switching to the book is that we started with talking about was Atlas of the Heart, but we're actually going to do a 2-part series on Matters of the Heart, maybe a bit longer.
Maybe more. Yeah.
But anyway, so this is Matters of the Heart, part 1. And my green light moment actually comes from the book Permission to Feel. Mm-hmm. And it's like, be a scientist, not a judge. So when you see someone struggling with emotion, or when you see someone's just struggling, rather than judging their behavior or their feelings or their this or their that, you could be a scientist and actually try to figure out what's happening.
Right.
And the same with yourself.
In a very compassionate way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like just actually seeking to understand rather than...
Right. So if you have something bubbling around emotionally inside you, same thing.
Like, don't judge yourself, just seek to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's the scientist part. So that was a really big green light.
Yeah. We'll put all the links to any books and podcasts that we talk about in the description of the YouTube video and on the show notes on the blog.
So Permission to Feel is Mark Brackett, and he's a PhD, Harvard, something or other. It doesn't really matter. No. But that's a life-changing book.
It is definitely.
Atlas of the Heart is Brene Brown, and Mistakes Were Made But Not By Me is...
There's two authors.
There's 2 authors, and I can't remember them. And No Cure for Being Human is Kate Bowler. So if you're actually interested in delving a little bit, not into being emotional, that's not what we're...
No, we already are.
We're emotional beings, and we react to things. But if you're actually interested in having a little bit healthier of an approach to not only your own emotions but how you deal with other people's emotions, which we call emotional intelligence, at least
several of these authors do call it that.
Actually. Yeah. So then choose one of these books to read. I think it's a good place. I personally would start with Atlas of the Heart.
Yeah.
And then probably do Permission to Feel, and then
Mistakes Were Made.
And then probably end with No Cure for Being Human, because hers is a story that you actually need to be kind of in control of your own emotions before you can read it. So anyway, that's
and
just
if any of you are leery of what people say pop psychology, this is really not pop psychology. It's not. It's human. Not just feel good.
Oh, no, there's nothing. In fact, in Permission to Feel, he actually delves into what to do with your big emotions, like your big, bad emotions.
Yeah, when life throws you for a loop.
Yeah, and the other one that would be a good one to read with this set is the one about fear.
The Dance of Fear.
The Dance of Fear,
by
which is
Harriet. I don't remember her name.
Anyway, yeah, because that is another one that delves into the whole thing about. And certainly in Permission to Feel, the goal is not to be happy.
No.
So, and there's a particular chapter in it that everyone who is involved in education or teaching or anything like that
or leadership
should be reading.
Yeah.
And in the Mistakes Were Made one, there's a chapter 6, which is about marriage and relationships,
which everybody should
read too. So,
and take to heart.
And take to heart, obviously. And then the podcast recommendation is yours.
I really appreciate Seth Godin's points of view. I've mentioned him before. He recently re-released a podcast called Status Roles, I think it might have been originally recorded 3 or 4 years ago, but it's still very, very pertinent. And if you look for Akimbo, A-K-I-M-B as in Bob, O, and look for the most recent episode, June 22nd, that is, called Status Roles. Really, really
we
makes you think about...
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, like between the two of us as we watch, people striving, and instead of kind of striving to be whole, we just see people striving for... And there's a status that is about not having status. That's a whole nother thing too.
So many layers.
I think it's just a human condition, right? And
absolutely.
Anyway, it's just really good to hear his perspective, and so it's worth a listen. So Matters of the Heart. And
Part 1.
Yeah. So
are we just going to ask some questions?
Yeah, I think what kind of got us on this journey is sort of... A lot of it was like listening to and dealings over the last while with the political, like the polarization of society, like with vaccines and Trump and now Roe v. Wade and like all these kinds of things.
And in the Canadian political context with Jody Wilson-Raybould and
the election where people are so polarized.
And the truckers in Canada.
Right. So I think those world events right now are kind of what has sort of pushed us to think about, because so many of these things that are happening are actually matters of the heart. Like they're emotionally based. People make their decisions based on emotion. I mean, if you read people's reactions on Facebook to things and people being defriended on Facebook because they don't agree with this or that or whatever. I mean, my reason for letting somebody go off Facebook is for me a matter of trust. It's not really a matter of emotion.
Or having different opinions.
No, I don't care about that. It's a matter of, do I trust the person who's on my Facebook feed with, not that I post a ton of like
personal stuff,
but do I trust them? And have they proven, so, and but I mean, every single kind of decision that we make has an emotional component. And so watching people make these decisions about why, and being so stuck in their belief about, like, even in the face of, because we've watched all the January 6th hearings just out of interest, not live usually, but afterwards, and just seeing people that stand by Trump and some of those people, despite the fact that people like were killed and and that the evidence proves that there was no fraud or there was no this and people,
the book Mistakes Were Made really delves into why we make up our minds about something, even if it was a mistake, and justify it to the nth degree.
So what do you see emotional intelligence as being? Like for you personally, what does it mean to be emotionally intelligent?
Well, I used to think it was just kind of being balanced, but now it's more being metacognition, meta-aware of emotions.
In yourself.
Within myself
and
first.
Yes.
And fighting the urge to be quick to judge in others, and instead be curious.
Yeah. And that's that whole thing about what I said at the beginning when I said a scientist, not a judge.
What is emotional intelligence to you?
To me, it is and I mean, you're saying that by saying that meta moment kind of thing that actually he refers to in Permission to Feel. Yeah. But for me, it's to be able to step outside and actually realize that you're still in an emotional state, but not let that control how you treat someone else or how you even react to yourself or a situation. Is being able to go, okay, I can see that this particular situation has made everybody polarized.
Yeah.
So what is it that I can do to promote unity? Which is, that's just one of the main things about being a person in society, is to be able to promote unity, right? Like you're going about life to kind of bring things together. And in order to do that, you actually have to step outside of the emotion and look at it like
more objective.
Like you're floating up. It's almost like there's you and whatever's happening and the other people, and you're still in it, but you're also floating above it, kind of going, ooh, if I do that, this is going to happen. If I do this, then maybe people will feel a little bit more.
Right.
Like, I'll give an example of what I considered to be emotional intelligence when I was a principal. And a parent would call me and they would just be like way up here emotionally, like just freaking out. And I would say, like, I'm really sorry that happened. And I want to listen, I want to hear the story. And then immediately when they know that you're actually going to listen to them, for the most part, they were calm.
Yeah, well, they could start to de-escalate a bit.
And I would say, and I'm right now taking notes so that I can figure this out, because I agree with you, this is not right.
Right.
So, I think that's part of just being emotionally intelligent and just saying, and I didn't say it if I didn't agree with them.
No, I know what you're saying.
But I'm saying that if a situation really did, because I think parents' perceptions most of the time about principals, and I think it's true of some principals, is that they're going to just side with the teacher. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that does happen a lot.
Yeah, I think so.
But anyway, so that's what I kind of, and then, sort of the next phase of it. So if we are, having all these issues and people are so stuck and we're all polarized and everything, why is it so difficult for us to just be accountable for our own role in things? And
even to be accountable for our emotions. Like sometimes I could say, oh, I'm sorry you're so upset. I'm not upset.
Yeah.
Right. It's not
actually,
right. The other person says, I'm not upset. Well, okay. Are you angry? Are you frustrated? Like, what's the word?
Right. And that's the other thing I think by reading these books. There's the four main emotions, right?
Yeah,
happy,
fear, anger, happy, and sad. Yeah.
But by looking at Atlas of the Heart and some of these other books, you see this range of emotions that exist so that you're actually properly labeling what's happening. And maybe that helps you be more accountable. But I don't know. It just feels like it's so difficult for people to just say, like, as a parent, do you not think I ever remember saying, look, I'm just a little bit too angry right now to actually talk about this?
I don't know why, people don't want to be, being accountable for something is uncomfortable. It can be embarrassing. It can stir up new emotions, and then you have 2 or 3 layers of emotions on top of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think about situations.
And people also have lost a lot of trust. So it's hard to find a safe environment to be accountable in sometimes.
Right. But I just think of someone who has blasted somebody, say on email about something, right? Like really blasted them. And then they come back with kind of like I'm sorry. But it's like once you've done that to somebody and then done it a few times where you've kind of let loose, it's not really
saying I'm sorry isn't good enough. And it's just that dynamic like some families or couples have where the apology isn't even said sometimes. It's just everything's brushed in and then things kind of go back to, let's just be happy. Or
there's suddenly this
and it's all unsaid. And so then some people think that that's an apology.
Yeah.
Just to make it happy now.
But it's very... Yeah. So I don't know, it's so difficult. And then once you're entrenched in something that is the way you think or the way you saw a situation, like people have a really hard time unentrenching themselves from.
Absolutely.
And I mean,
and I think the chapter 6 from Mistakes Were Made has made me see when I'm accountable for something for you or the kids, there's actually a relief in finally owning up to it, and you can actually move past it a lot faster.
Yes. And then
like I'm finding, even though it's uncomfortable, I'm finding the practice of accountability is way better than other approach.
And then you're you're moving past always being involved in self-justification.
Yeah.
Always look what that person is like, so that justifies me in doing this. And when are you ever justified in kind of dehumanizing somebody? I don't know when you can justify that, but it's difficult. And I think we kind of talked about what's led us to think and talk and make changes to the way we approach emotional health. I think,
well, we've worked on ourselves our whole marriage, and prior to meeting each other too. I think we just have always
and I also
had
think
seasons
part of it was
this type of exploration.
Yes, and I think a part of it as well was listening to that Falling Upwards, some of that book, which we haven't quite finished yet, but that idea that we are in the second phase of our lives. And so I've learned a ton in the first phase of my life, and I want to live out the second phase, like not with maybe differently, but
with those lessons,
curiosity,
with those lessons having been learned, and not repeat them again.
Well, and with the ability to, like, if I'm going to actually consider myself to be available to other people to support them because of the experiences I've had in my life, they're not going to want that if it comes across as judgmental.
Right.
But if you're coming...
Well, and the danger that's always tricky is how to come across as, I've already done this and you haven't done this work. Like, it's...
Well, I think for me, like, you know, especially as I watch young people parent, right?
Yeah.
That it's, I don't feel as if that I did all of that right. Or when I look at people, you know, going forward with their careers and becoming leaders and things, I certainly didn't do all of that part of my life right. So I think there's a difference between people who feel like, okay, here I am, I'm the guru, I'm the, I've got the answers, I'll tell you how to be a parent or a leader or a this or that, or a husband or a wife. Rather, I'm coming from the whole thing where when you tell me something you're struggling with in your marriage, I'm going to say, yeah, been there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still there sometimes.
Right.
You know, and when I see, parents being concerned about their kids' behavior or something that's not happening, instead of saying, well, when I had kids, I did this, 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 and this.
Yeah, no.
Then you almost are at the point where you say, yeah, you know what, I totally get that. And my kid, we struggled with that too. And, I was just thinking of the other day when we were talking about the soccer thing, right? Instead of saying, well, you should make him, get out there and do that and whatever, you kind of say, yeah, I remember the first time one of ours tried soccer, they didn't really click with them. And so we dropped it, and then we tried again later when they showed an interest, and we weren't like...
Yeah.
We weren't
sideline parents.
No, and we weren't trying to superimpose our way that we did things as parents onto them,
right.
But rather saying, yeah, this is a tough job, very tough job. So if you can identify right now that you're feeling frustrated with your child, because lots of times we felt frustrated with her, and really say what kind of frustration you're feeling, whether you're peeved at them, whether you're just whatever, impatient, whatever.
Or feeling guilty.
Or sometimes frustration and guilt.
Sometimes status shame.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, look at all the other kids and my kid's not doing this, but the other kids all are.
Yeah.
Then there's status shame.
So that, I think... I mean, I just think that is part of the reason why, because I want to be someone who is curious and interested and approachable with my and that particularly with people who are at a younger phase of life. I want them to understand that you don't all of a sudden at some point have all the answers and figure it all out. That it's just a constant. And he says that, especially in permission. Well, no, Brene Brown talks about that a lot, where you're always working at that. Like you never, because things hit you all of a sudden, and especially as you age, you get hit with.
I don't know the expression. I mean, one constant is that everything always changes, and this is all part of it. Like
right, and I mean, I just feel sorry for situations.
Just thinking of that novel that we are listening to, where the old neighbor comes to chew out this mother of kids that are being raised in the digital world with digital devices, and the man can't figure it out, and he has all the answers.
When I had my kids, I just did this.
And this is what I would have done to your kids if I had been the dad.
Right, and not realizing though that it's just a story, but her husband has left her. She's,
I just think kids growing up in the digital era with devices, there's a whole new set of things.
We didn't deal with those kinds of decisions.
No.
I mean, I still have some basic things that I approve
We know what
of.
we would do.
Well, I do. Like, it does scare me when I see kids taking devices to bed when they're young.
Yes.
Because I just think that's bad for brain health.
We had no devices or screens allowed in the bedroom till they were 16.
Yeah.
And then it was for homework.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing about us is we couldn't afford.
No.
Like our kids didn't have their own iPads and their own, like all these young kids do now.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't afford to do that. But anyway, and I just wanted to get in, there's this whole, I want to talk about the whole ruler because...
So RULER is an acronym from the book Permission to Feel.
Right.
And
it's well researched, and it's actually...
it's a program at Yale University in Education Division something.
And it's something that he is trying to persuade people to integrate into education systems. So it's not like...
Yeah, the state of Connecticut actually has espoused it as a whole state.
Yeah.
With all of the superintendents and districts have embraced it and are learning to implement it.
But it's not like, okay, every Thursday at 2:00 we do ruler.
No.
It's integrated into everything that you do.
Yeah.
So the R stands for... recognizing the emotion. The U is understanding. The L is labeling. The E is expressing it, like learning to express it.
Yeah. And the R is regulating.
Yeah. And so they actually talk in the book about creeds and things that classrooms and schools adopt that focus on that. Plus he has this emotion board.
The mood meter.
The mood meter, which is like
it's a poster. It's a poster with about 64 emotion words on it. Yeah.
So anyway, well researched.
Like the recognizing, for example, is your neck is red, your ears are hot, and your mouth is dry. What emotions are happening? So then you kind of try and figure out what's going on in your body. And then it's understanding what is causing that emotion to happen. And then labeling it is being more specific. We are better when we have more language to describe things than when we have less. Yeah. Because if I say I'm angry when I'm actually frustrated, people are going to address that anger differently.
And so once it's labeled, then you can express it properly. You can say, I am frustrated because, whatever it is. And then you can and then the whole idea behind regulation. And there's a bunch of strategies, which I think we'll probably get into.
Yeah, we'll get another one. So why do we dig deeper into our beliefs when we are faced with the truth? And why do we or why don't we?
Well, when I read this, I was like, why do we dig deeper into a false belief?
Okay.
When we're faced with the truth, like, why does that? I don't like. I find that just fascinating. That
I'm reading a different book now. Can't remember the title or author, so that'll be a
Changing Minds.
Something about that. But it talks about neurologically. For example, there's a chemical spike that happens in our brain when we feel certain about something. So if I give you in a spelling bee, I say, okay, spell the word acorn, and you spell it, and I say yes. Your brain's like, oh, I'm certain about that spelling. I got it right. There's actually a chemical that reacts. So I feel certain. So that certainty is something that feels good. So then we hold on to it. And then there's another chemical, which is recognizing that there's a disparity between what you know and what you're being told.
Right.
And if you are willing to learn, your brain will actually release this chemical. It has a name. So that your mind is like, oh, I'm willing to learn something now. But there are some people that chemical doesn't ever release.
Yeah, because
they don't know enough about it yet. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily biological. It can be a stubbornness or a
right. It's like interesting though, eh? But you just
but those are just these are theories. They're
right,
not true
obviously.
Answers.
But there's just I've experienced that with people, right? Where you're like, you can see that this way of teaching children to read is not effective.
Yeah.
But you can't move them away. Or this particularly the one that is the way of teaching math.
Oh, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's one right answer, there's this, and when I just remember this one particular woman. Kids would be trying different things, to solve problems, and she'd actually be going around saying, no, that's not right. You can't do it that way, when it was perfectly right.
Ooh.
And I would say, sit her down with other teachers who are saying, okay, yeah, give the children the opportunity to explore and come up with different perspectives and approaches. I don't know. I think maybe it is, I think we need to give
some
our
of it is
children
just pure stubbornness.
Well, and I think though, this is the importance of giving our kids different perspectives as they're growing up.
Yeah.
Because if they never kind of look at anything from a different perspective, that's what worries me, to be honest, about highly religious upbringings, like fundamental, deep-seated religious upbringings, because there's only one perspective.
Yeah.
And so, homosexuality is wrong. Mm-hmm. So even given a whole bunch of evidence that, I always think of that one scene in West Wing where the woman is a religious radio host. And it's a fiction. Sequence of fiction, but he starts quoting scripture, and he's like, should I, do I
if my daughter has done this, do I put her at the end of the road to have her stoned? Or if somebody touches a football, which is a pigskin, then we do this.
He was taking some of these passages and he was actually saying, a lot of those Old Testament things were done for the time to keep people healthy and, and whatever, but times have changed, and
a lot of the masochistic mistreatment of women was cultural and not religious. And
that's the same thing, with us, with you growing up Mennonite, right? All of a sudden certain things about the way your aunts and people are, it's like, is that is that religious, or is that just the way your family interpreted the culture and played it out? Mm-hmm. Like when food almost becomes like a religious
prescribed way of cooking,
and then when
shaming the woman if they cooked it a little differently.
I felt that a lot. As a person coming into the family. And then when I went to the first Mennonite with your dad's funeral, right? Yeah. And it was like pieces of day-old raisin bread and white cheese, and I was like, what is wrong with you people? Like, because and
I went to one of your funerals, and it was like this huge spread with all these fancy sandwiches and tea and cakes, and I was like, whoa, this is expensive.
Well, because but people made it all and brought it.
Yeah, like
it wasn't purchased. No. Like, that was what the community does, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, you bunch of cheapskates, you get a bunch of day-old bread and cheese.
And I thought, you got some money wasters. The person's gone. Why are you spending so much money?
Well, because you honor, your feet, like all these people have
I know. I totally espouse your point of view.
And then you give them a piece of bread. Not even really buttered. It was like dry.
Yeah. Oh,
was
maybe
there butter?
Not. Yeah, there was butter.
And tea.
No, margarine.
And tea.
And tea. What? Yeah, no coffee. Tea.
No, tea. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, but for some people, like, because they want to feel like the Mennonite culture, religion, and traditions are so amazing, like they just can't let go of anything about it that really isn't that amazing.
I know, but a lot of transplanted cultures, like immigrants and refugees, hang on to the old country ways.
Yeah, no, and I'm just saying, like,
And then it's interesting. Sometimes it makes it to the second generation, and sometimes even to the third. But then it does start waning.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But or also look at the Canadian Italian culture. They take things a completely. I have a friend who's recently arrived from Italy, and he looks at this and goes, "Wow, we don't do this in Italy. Like, this isn't Italian."
Yeah.
But here, it's fourth generation already, and they have a whole new way of doing it, and they think it's the Italian way, and it isn't at all. Like Italy.
Yeah. So, but it's just that whole idea. And I mean, I think it's particularly bad. Like, I don't really care about Italian or Mennonite culture. No, I don't care what they do. But when it comes to treatment of women, like
that's a different
Roe v. Wade and homosexuality and Well,
I don't know the stats in Canada, but 1974, a woman had to have a man's signature, not her husband, father, brother, whatever, to get a credit card. Yeah. 1988. Until 1988, a woman had to have a man's signature to get a bank loan, a business loan, anything like 88.
Yeah.
Like we were already in our 20s.
Yeah.
Like, that is just ridiculous. I don't know the Canadian stats, but
but so we dig into these things.
So that's cultural, but the religion has had a huge.
There's all this evidence that men and women are equal and everything, and yet.
Yeah. Nope.
We're still fighting. And I mean, even I will say, for sure, as a female leader, even though I was in elementary, it was the way I was treated was totally different than the way men were treated. Men were allowed to, but as soon as women, then you're a bitch or you're this, or sorry about the whatever. But anyway, it's just interesting. And we talked kind of about the most common emotions that people refer to. Yeah. And then why. That's all I had.
Yeah, well, I guess we've covered the points then that you had
we kind of wanted to plan. So, I mean, I would say, do you see listen to these birds fighting, eh? Or whatever they're doing.
They're fighting.
They're fighting, I think, over something. Pooping on my lawn, my clothesline of clothes, maybe. I think in terms of the reason why I want to understand more about this whole kind of journey is because to me it's just so interesting to see, and particularly in the States, but we are not immune here.
Not
when
at
I
all.
think
we have different issues.
I mean, it's
here.
not as pronounced here, like, but when you think that all summer long we're going to have truckers in Ottawa,
Yeah.
for what?
I don't know, because the vaccine mandate has been lifted.
For what?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't.
I don't
And
know.
yet they've dug into this.
Yep.
They're entrenched now, and that they have to somehow, and all these things,
Make a
F.
statement.
Trudeau, and all these things that you see now.
Mm-hmm.
That are so inappropriate. That's the Prime Minister of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that you don't like him, then you vote him out. You don't run around with, inappropriate, like, curse words on your front yard.
However,
or your truck.
there are a group of, not all Democrats, there are a group of Democrats that were like F Trump, and
Yes.
whatever, right?
Right.
So it's
and
just
that's
another.
just not.
It's just
And I have to say that, in listening to those hearings, like, the people in charge
Yeah.
are not, like, being inappropriate.
Well, they still call him former president, except a couple of them.
Yeah,
They just
a couple
call
of
him
them
Mr.
don't.
Trump or Donald.
Mr. Trump or
Mr.
Donald Trump.
But they dropped the president title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying.
But it's interesting. Like, it's a very indirect slight,
Mm-hmm.
but they're treating him as the man rather than the position that he had.
Because,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying they're not attacking his person.
No.
They're clarifying his actions and choices.
Yeah.
Whereas when I have been attacked,
They are attacking you.
they attack you, your person,
Yeah.
your personality, who you are.
And I mean, obviously, we've been talking about a couple of men in politics, but I think that they attack women
Oh, yes.
way
Well,
differently.
Whenever
men
when you
can get
talk
away with a
about
lot
when
more
Hillary
for a long
Clinton,
time.
the only
Yeah.
thing they ever talked about is what she wore in her pantsuits.
I know.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
And men,
Doesn't matter.
wow,
what
that's
they
an
wear.
ugly suit. No one ever
Not
says.
even the color of the tie. They don't even talk about anything.
But even Kamala Harris,
Yeah.
like, it's
Oh,
the
yeah.
same.
I know.
And immediately when she became, there was this whole thing
But then
that went out about how difficult she was to work for and how demanding.
Yeah.
And the
No,
same
total
thing
unfair.
about Meghan Markle
Yeah.
when her staff and people had to quit and whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe those people that had to quit should have quit a long time ago.
Exactly.
Like, when there's no accountability and
No.
people aren't,
Yep.
like we talked with this in today about, like, jobs where you aren't really evaluated ever or given feedback.
I know.
And a lot of that occurs in the teaching profession. So we are people,
At least in Canada.
here we are as in a career where your job is to give children, adults, wherever you're working,
Feedback
university,
and the assessments.
and assessment, but because you're protected by a union,
You cannot
you
be
don't
assessed.
have to be assessed.
Yeah.
Or
if
if
you
you-
are assessed,
Oh,
they tear it apart and
Yeah.
have you delete this and black this out.
yes.
No, this is
Well, all I
whatever.
remember is having a long-term occasional, and everybody said, don't bother evaluating long-term occasional. It's not even worth it, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, no, this guy's bad
as a teacher.
as a teacher. He's a nice guy, very nice guy, but just not good.
Yep.
And I did the evaluation. It was very fair. And what's the next call you get from the superintendent? The union is, questioning this, and this.
Yeah.
And basically,
So
they-
it makes you feel like, why bother? Because
and I remember
just gotta
my
be
friend,
protected.
my friend going through unsatisfactories, and then the superintendent coming in the end and going, "Oh, we'll just sign that he's satisfactory, and then we'll just move him."
Yeah.
So it is just bizarre to me, and that's all based on emotion.
Yeah.
All those decisions are
Fear.
not based on.
Yeah.
So what are the
On
two
fear,
things that
discomfort.
education means is accountability and a focus on children and not on unions.
Yeah.
So anyway, we digress a big amount, but stay tuned. I think next time we'll get into some of the strategies that we find really, really helpful, and then maybe talk about I would like to talk about some of the emotions that are not quite as common.
Yeah, that'd be good too.
Because there are like Schadenfreude and all these other little ones that are not as common, right? Yeah. So, all right. So thank you for joining us for part 1 of Matters of the Heart
on No Room for Phonies, episode 67.
Be a scientist, not a judge.